What's up, everybody? Here we are once again inside the studio for another podcast. And of course, like always, I want to thank my sponsor, first of all, Movita Juice Bar. If you're into smoothies, if you're into acai bowls, if you're into taking what are that wheatgrass shots and ginger shots and man all that good stuff, go to movitajuicebar.com to find a location near you, or you can also use your food apps to order from them. Movitajuicebar.com, only good stuff. I also want to thank our second sponsor, Picaresca Cafe. Picaresca Cafe is a Boyle Heights coffee shop inside of a little shopping center, but damn, they're fucking badass. And they have food every day. They have coffee every day. Good stuff. And also, they roast their own beans that will soon be a part of something that I'm putting together. So, looking forward to working with them for a long time. And shout out to Picaresca Cafe. Go to picarescacafe.com also if you want to look them up. Next, I want to remind you to go see Nico Avina. He was our guest last week. Nico Avina has an art show at Espacio 1839 on First Street. We forgot to mention that in the podcast. So hopefully you can, the show is up all of July, so you still have time to go and check it out. So shout out to Nico again. And also shout out to my brother for this shirt. That means that he concedes that I am the Wordle master in the family, and I appreciate that title. Next is our guest this week. Our guest this week is the executive director of Inclusive Action. He is a street vendor activist. Ladies and gentlemen, Rudy Espinosa. Hey everybody, welcome back once again to the Dancing Sober podcast. Today we have this young man right here before me. It's been a minute since we've hung out together, but you're still, one of the people out there that are doing the work that a lot of times we don't see, but, putting in work to build things and to grow things that a lot of times people are not aware of. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, Rudy Espinosa.
Thanks for having me, Rafa.
Rudy Espinosa. So I like to start just by saying, just like a little bit about you and yourself, a little bit about where you grew up and where you were born and your childhood. What kind of childhood did you have?
What do you want to know? How deep do you want to get?
Well, it's up to you. We're open. We've cried here before.
Yeah. Well, I was born in at the East LA Doctors Hospital.
On Whittier.
I was born there, and I grew up in West Covina in the San Gabriel Valley. And I'm still sort of piecing together the story of my birth and, like, why I was born there. I think part of it was just insurance, like health insurance, and where my mom felt safe to get care. But I know was sort of, I know that she was searching for a place where she could have me. But she migrated to this country when she was 18 from Zacatecas, and she was coming here to have a summer to work with her cousins that I actually just reconnected with recently, who had a framing business in downtown LA, framing art. And so she was working for their household, sort of taking care of family members, and was here. And as she was having, being an 18-year-old here in the United States, she wanted to get away from her family. She started working when she was 12 in Zacatecas. So I think she needed a little break. And then she ended up meeting my dad in an English class. And so that was sort of the beginning, I guess.
Inglés sin barreras, right?
Totally. That's the way that I imagine it. But yeah, she met my dad in an English class. My dad was really bad news. Everybody told her that it was not a good idea. But she was smitten by this man with, like, muscle shirts and, like, it was just like hot rod cars.
Early 70s.
Yeah. Some of the photos that I've dug up, it's like, it was, my mom was like, had the whole fit, and like, she was like kicking it with this guy. He's from Jalisco, and he has been a line cook for his whole career here in this country, and but he had his he wasn't ready to be a dad. But he ended up marrying my mom, and then they had me, and they had my little brother.
How old were they?
My mom had me when she was 23.
Okay, so
So
not
she
too
probably,
young.
yeah. So
Yeah.
she, I don't know, she got married maybe a year before that. But I'm uncovering a lot of stuff, Rafa. I don't
Yeah.
want to get into it, but like just recently I uncovered a lot about my mom and like her mental
Oh, you're
state.
barely learning things.
Oh, just barely.
Oh,
Totally,
wow.
yeah. Just barely learning about, what was happening in my mom's life during that time when she had me, and like the.
So is your mom still alive? Your mom and dad?
Yeah,
still
she
alive?
is. My
Okay.
both of them are still alive. My dad was never really around. He was, he was an adulterer. He was an alcoholic. So I grew up in a household that had a lot of violence in it. There was a lot of domestic violence. My mom was a victim of that, and so I don't have a relation with my dad. So he left. He was never really around, but he officially left. My mom divorced him when I was about 4th grade. And so she was basically took on the charge of like, I got to take care of these kids on my own. She was still undocumented at that time. She was a hostess at a restaurant in West Covina. And then essentially the story is that her manager at the time was like, Carmen, you're going to need to become a waitress. You have to start waiting on tables to get tips, dude.
Get
Because
that
how are you
English,
going to take care of your kids? And she tells the story of how scared she was, because she was like, I don't speak English that well. I'm not formally educated. Like, how am I going to be able to deal with this? And her manager was like, you better just get with it, dude. You don't have a choice. This guy's bad news. And
You
you gotta
obviously
get
liked
out.
her work ethic too. So
Totally. I got that from her. And
yeah.
I think I learned recently that my dad, he also has a work ethic of his own, but he was lost.
Well, that was a completely different time. Like when I think of the adult men in my life in the 70s, like there was a lot of that going on, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of domestic abuse, and just insanity in some cases.
Totally.
Just straight up crazy motherfuckers, like just living life however the fuck they wanted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally see that.
Yeah.
And so your mom raised you then a good boy.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Covina High School.
Okay. Yeah.
My mom is, she did it, I think it's almost like she overcompensated a bit without my dad around. I think she was really afraid that I was going to go down that path. I think she saw the destruction that takes and that it has on families. And she's also very religious. My family in Mexico is very religious, and so she sort of took that and we were really church-going kids. She still goes to church every week.
Do you still go to church?
I think when I was young, I thought I was going to be a pastor.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm still really interested in religion and just like I like spirituality and I'm into those things.
Yeah.
But I sort of lost my way in high school, and then when I went to school and I started to learn about the history of Christianity and in this world, and I was like, wait a minute, these people are not that good all the time.
I mean, it's interesting too because once you learn certain things, it's hard to like completely get behind like Catholicism, for example. In my case, once you unlearn certain things, you can't unlearn them, and follow it with the same blind faith that you had, I guess, when you were young. But I only asked, do you still go to church? Because my mom is also very religious, and I don't go to church anymore. So I get the constant, sí, pero tú no vas a misa, mijo.
Yeah, totally.
Or like, mom, reza por mí, ¿por qué no vas a misa? Y tú rezas por ti mismo.
Right, yeah, totally. I'm all about that. And, she'd be like, oh, you're struggling with something. I just pray. Yeah. I'm like, I think it's going to need to be a little something extra. In addition to the prayer, I think we need a little extra. But I think my mom has accepted me in my path. I think that as she saw me explore other religions, she was really concerned and like, oh my God.
If you don't mind.
I explored a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm still like exploring, but I think, there was a period of time where I was really interested in Islam and like, that sort of system. And I definitely was, we're here on the west side. I was like going to the Nichiren Buddhist Center right there, dude, chanting. I was doing chanting. That. I was there for a little bit.
I learned about like the Bhagavad Gita there too from a friend of mine. So I did read some of that, but I then became just somebody who liked to read other religious books.
Uh-huh.
Like I wasn't trying to get involved with any of them,
Right.
but I did want to read them
Sure.
because that's probably the best part of some religions. is
Totally.
the writing.
Oh
Right?
man, the writing's awesome. So I think that's where I'm at now. I think that the Christianity that I grew up in it sort of set a foundation for me to learn about the Creator and how the universe works and the Spirit and all that. But I think that if anything, if I had to choose one faith, it would probably be Buddhism. I feel like that framework.
That's exactly the same.
I feel like
thing
it's
for
just
me.
helpful.
I
There's
think it just
tools
lets you
there.
be.
It lets me be,
It
but
lets
then
you
it's also
be,
like if I'm
yeah.
struggling, there's tools that that you can use to get through that. You know. So anyway, I love all faiths though. You invite me to
Yeah.
church or someone invites me to church, I'm like down to go, and I'm gonna be there with my notes and like try to figure out what they're saying and yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. So now you then go to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to UC Riverside.
UC Riverside.
I studied business.
business. That was your bachelor.
Yeah.
And how was your experience there in Riverside? So this had to be like in the 90s?
I went there in 2000.
2000. Okay.
2000.
You're young.
Yeah, I went there in 2000 and I studied business because I wanted to get rich. That was my goal. I think that I grew up in a household where my mom would come home every day stressed out about work and wondering if she's going to make enough tips to sort of pay the rent. And I remember the shoebox that she had where she would put all her tips and how she would count it and be like really meticulous about that and nervous. And she was always like, dude, if you don't want to work like me, you need to go to school. And I was like, man, I need to take care of my mom. I guess if I get a business degree, I'm going to get rich and I'll be able to do that.
I want to ask you, what did it mean to you at that age to like get rich?
The vision was, and this is like the memory that I have, it's still very clear in my mind. I don't know exactly what it meant, but I knew that I had a black Mercedes S-Class. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And it was tinted. I can't remember if it had rims, but it was a black Mercedes S-Class. And I knew that I was going to drive to my mom's restaurant and tell her to throw her apron on the floor, and then we're out of there. And that I was going to take care of the rest. That's it. That was rich to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you have an idea of what type of business you were going to go into
No.
at the beginning?
I just knew it was going to be an air-conditioned office.
Yeah.
That's it. That was me. I mean, I didn't have really a
dope.
lot of college advisors helping me, so I was like, oh, I'm going to be in air conditioned. I'm probably going to wear a suit, Rafa. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some kind of a briefcase,
Yeah.
but I'm going to have that S-Class,
To get
that
to
was
and from. Yeah.
and then it's going to happen when I'm 21 too, because as soon as I get that bachelor's degree, clearly I'm going to
You're going to get rich right away.
I'm going to get rich right away. I'm going to get a
You
big
have the
job.
paperwork. Just go to the bank.
That was the extent of the plan.
So cool. Yeah. Well, the thing is that, in my life too, like I didn't have people that taught us those things, so
Nobody.
we just make up our own shit in our head,
Dude.
And I asked you, like, what did rich mean to you? Because to me, it meant like I was gonna get a lump sum with one thing that I did. I was gonna get a lump sum, and I was gonna be able to just live off of that lump sum.
that
And
sounds dope.
I didn't want a lot of money; just wanted to buy a little bit of land and have a horse. you
Yeah.
know, where my mom and dad could stay. That's what I imagined.
Maybe a full frame camera.
Yeah, exactly. Just something simple, And I imagined like that's all that I needed. Just one thing,
Yeah.
one accomplishment was gonna like cover it all.
I mean, it was a trip. It's a trip to me to think about it because, I don't know. I mean, I think things changed when I was in school, and that goes into the next part of my story, I guess. But the being rich was just like what I wanted, and maybe it was hip hop too, and just listening to rap music. And I was like, I got to get this money and like take care of my mom. And but I also grew up in West Covina as a suburb. And so I went to school with a variety of different folks that had different means. Some folks had single family homes that they lived in. We grew up in an apartment complex across the street from the freeway off the 10. And so when I went to school, I felt difference. I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but like I remember the shame that I had when my mom would come pick me up from high school, or like junior high to pick me up after school. And then she was driving our old 1988 Dodge Colt. It was kind of like a
Dodge Colt S-Class.
No, it was not even the S-Class, bro. It was like nothing. It was like the basics,
I
right?
remember
I know.
Yeah.
And it was like she would come home and she would have her uniform. She worked at IHOP, and she had her uniform. And I was like, damn, like I wish that we could at least have a Honda Accord, because I felt a shame of difference.
Yeah.
So rich to me was like, I just need to get to the next place of being like everybody else, because I felt so othered.
Yeah.
You know?
So the Honda Accord, of course, back then was like almost like the middle level of everything, right?
Yeah.
It was like the first step of like,
Sure.
getting up there. So what was the next part that you were going to say? Like, that's the next part of your story, but
I mean, I haven't got rich, but I mean, my life changed, I think, a little bit. I mean, a lot, actually. I mean, going to school, like, I went to UC Riverside. It was the only UC that accepted me. I was like, I have to go to a 4-year because that's part of the plan to get rich. And so I went to the UC Riverside. I showed up on the first day, had never toured the school. I was just like, this is where I'm going to be at. and I was going through the motions, Rafa. And then I was probably like a C student, maybe B plus, B minus, it was like around there. It was certainly not A. I was struggling with some classes, but I was like, I'm just going through the motions. And then I took an elective course, ethnic studies. It was the ethnic studies 101 course. And that was a change.
you found a niche or like a place to belong, or?
I think so. I think it was more of a purpose is what I found. I think that I started to realize that whatever I experienced as a kid, a lot of other people had similar experiences. A lot of people had a lot worse.
Yeah.
And I started to get really angry. And I was just like, why is this happening? And like this,
It's like
we are
you feel lied to for a long time when you finally
bit.
get to it. Because the same thing happened to me when I finally took Chicano studies at ELAC. It
Yeah.
was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it changed me, dude.
That 500 years of history book, like that was the first book that I
Dude, all that. And it really got me on a whole different trajectory that I'm still on.
Yeah.
And, I started to rethink everything. And it gave me purpose. And I tell folks that, like, if you look at my transcripts before that ethnic studies class and after that ethnic studies class, like, it's very different. Because after that, it was like straight A's. It was like I was on a mission. I was on a mission of like, this is not just about me.
Yeah, like correcting something that was.
Yeah, it was like, this is about all of us. This is a systemic thing that's happening. I got really motivated. So props to UC Riverside Ethnic Studies, Chicano student programs, and all that crew right there.
Yeah, and all the Chicano studies and ethnic studies courses across the country for everybody. When did you start seeing like that that the business thing that you were doing or studying was going to push you in that direction to like, do what you imagined this at one point for, I'm going to do a business because I'm going to get rich. Was there a turning point where you were like, I'm going to do this for a business for the community?
I think that ethnic studies class was the beginning. Mecha was was like the training ground as a young person in school. And then when I graduated, I finished the business degree, and because I didn't have money to like change my major, so I was like going to business class, but then I was hanging out with all the ethnic studies kids after. And it was interesting in retrospect. I think that then I started to build a skill set of being able to talk to both sides, And I graduated, and then I was like, I don't want to go work for the man with the business degree anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so basically I applied to grad school to just to stall. That's what I did.
Wow.
And I fell on urban planning because literally there was a person that was tabling at UC Riverside. And then my girlfriend at the time, her big brother was at UCLA in urban planning. I was like, what is urban planning? And basically urban planning is the study of communities and how they work. So I was like, this is a perfect place for me to go.
Yeah.
So I went to UCLA, and that whole process I'm explaining to you because those years helped refine to me the purpose. Then at UCLA, and I started to hang out with people and talk about like, wait a minute, like maybe I don't want to make money for myself, but I do have to understand how money works. I do have to understand how money impacts people. And if I could learn it enough, maybe I could help manipulate it.
Let me stop for a second right here and like talk about like that same thing, because like, all right, first you were saying you wanted to get rich, and then you took these ethnic studies things and these things that touch you thing, and then you were like, well, money's not important, like it's not the main thing anymore. Now, for me, I don't remember how, but at one point, like I hated money, and I was like, "Fuck money," and
Yeah.
I'm still kind of dealing with like that kind of thing too, where I just want to work on things that feel good to me, and I don't really worry about money, but I need money. So, how did you transition from like like the idea of being rich to then this, and how did you deal with that, like, or and then where are you now with that? I guess.
I don't know how I dealt with it. I just went through it. I guess I had this sort of fire. It was just like the way to do it. It was like I don't know. It was like I was a zealot. I was like, this is it's revolution. That's where I was, And my mom was very disappointed during that time. I think she was like, "You go to school. I thought you were a business. Now you're just talking about how you want to be Mexican, and why do you care about learning how to be Mexican? And like, why are you caring about this?"
I had an uncle tell me something similar.
Like love to my mom was awesome.
Yeah.
But she had like these
Yeah,
kind of concerns. Like I worked
it's
really
confusing
hard.
to them. Of
I worked
course.
really hard,
Yeah.
and now you're saying that you wanna understand and like work. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And so I don't know. I think I was just driven by this purpose of this thing that it's not about me. It's about us. And that kind of got me through it. And kind of similar to you, I was like, I'm going to have a faith that if I keep doing the work that I care about, the resources will come.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, and to a lot of people, just do what you love thing, and it doesn't feel like work, and then, something will happen.
Yeah.
So let's get to, well, first Learn, right? Was that your first organization?
No, it was my first gig. No,
What was your first?
it was not.
What was your first? So,
After school, I went to go work at a consulting firm,
okay.
working with banks.
Oh, okay. Damn, you got all the inside scoop
Yeah.
of like everything. You got the business, you got the ethnic study, and then you got
I went to go work at
urban
this
planning.
small consulting firm that was doing really interesting things, trying to help banks be responsible.
I
Okay.
think I know what you're talking about.
And it was a small firm. I learned a lot from those guys about how to like work with these companies, and then it also was the way that I first started to get involved in LA in the East Side groups. Like Boyle Heights was a place that I landed back in 2004.
Was this the group that did the little markets? Did you work with a group like that like helped corner stores like?
No, that came later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had a few gigs before my current organization. I was working at that consulting firm that taught me a lot. Then I went to go work at this organization called the AARP Foundation, AARP being the agency that represents a lot of folks over 50. And they were, they were seeking someone to help them invest and support low-income seniors in LA. I did that for a little less than a year. Then I went to go work in South LA at a nonprofit that was doing micro lending, and I was doing that for a couple years until I made the decision to come to where I am now. But Learn, or now Inclusive Action, was a side project that I started with friends.
Real quick, Learn was.
Leadership for Urban Renewal Network.
I love that name.
Do you?
Oh, you are.
Yeah. I didn't.
Oh, okay. Why? Is it problematic now with the urban
it's always been
renewal, or?
problematic. So I think that so I think that the most important piece of the story is like the people that convened it, and some of the co-founders and the founder of it, Alfred, and like I think that was to me the most valuable piece of it, is these people from various parts of the city coming together to rethink how we support community. That was like the genesis.
Alfred Freichel. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the genesis of the organization. The name was something that sort of came as we were convening and having lunches and getting to know each other. The idea was like we should create a formal space, like an organization that can house these ideas. And the name Learn was generated out of that. I was one of the minority of the volunteers at the time that were like, we don't like that name, because I'm an urban planner. I studied urban planning, and I understand what urban renewal has done and what it continues to do.
Yeah, that part.
But the idea of that name in the beginning was like, can we reclaim this term? Is there a way we could reclaim this? Our communities have had other names that were derogatory before and now have become empowering. Chicano being one of them, or queer. There's a lot of words that communities have sort of reclaimed and repurposed. So the idea was, can we repurpose urban renewal? But over the years until 2019, it was just became distracting. And I think that our team was just not motivated behind it, you know. And so the organization decided to rebrand and be more aligned with what we do.
And that's how Inclusive Action was born?
Yeah.
Is it still the same people at the core of it?
It's changed significantly as we've grown. I think so. A lot of that, we only have a couple of founders left on the board. The board is very different now. I think we've grown. I've been there for 9 years.
So Learn became Inclusive Action, and Learn is a nonprofit that does what? I mean, not Inclusive Action. Like, so tell us about Inclusive Action now and like what you guys do.
Yeah, Inclusive Action is a nonprofit community development organization that it builds strong local economies, and that's what we're really focused on. And we do it in two ways. We do it through political work, through advocacy work, and we do it by administering economic development programs. One of the biggest initiatives that we have is a micro-lending program that provides low-interest loans to businesses.
Okay.
And so we really focus on helping entrepreneurs in our neighborhoods that can't get money elsewhere. We're sort of the last, it's either us or the payday lender. And so our team focuses on getting low interest loans to those folks that are never going to be able to get approved by a bank. And then we provide a lot of coaching and support to them. The majority of our clients are street vendors. Majority of our clients are undocumented. We really try to get capital to the people that need it and that deserve it.
So now that we've come around to the street vendors, I know that, I mean, we can talk about all these intertwined here, but the street vendors, you've had a big part in like helping street vendor become legalized. Or
yes.
Can you tell us about that journey a little bit?
Yeah, so back in the day, I remember that, this is back in the day before we had staff, before I came on, we were a volunteer organization, and we were at Alfred's office, and we were talking about the recession. This is 2008, 2009, and we were talking about how it was impacting our neighborhoods, and we ended up talking about street vendors, and we were talking about how like they're resilient entrepreneurs, they're out in the streets no matter what, and like they're trying to figure out ways to take care of their families, and so we started a research project. I remember meeting at Alfred's house in Boyle Heights and going out onto the street to survey vendors on Cesar Chavez and just to be like, what's up with you guys? You guys doing good? Like, tell us about your experiences. And many of them were talking about why they were vending. They didn't have a job, or they had a job that didn't pay enough. And all of them were telling us how the cops were treating them or how the city was treating them. And as a result of some of this research, we identified that LA was one of the only major cities that didn't have a permit system for sidewalk vendors.
Wow.
And so we began to connect with other organizations that were also seeing this. East LA Community Corporation was also a big player at that time that was like, oh, we see this too. Vendors are coming to us complaining about this stuff. Caridad will tell you she was she vends on 4th and Breed, and she was like, hey, dude, I was going to ELAC and saying we got to do something about this. So the LA Street Vendor campaign formed out of this inquiry of like what's happening in the city, and the vendors were saying that there's a problem here. Why is it that we're not being honored, and why are we always worried about the health department or the cops coming to move us? You know. So that sort of started. That was like 2010. And that was the beginning of a long saga that continues.
Yeah.
You know?
I know that at this point, so the point right now is like street vending is legal.
Yes.
But it's still difficult for some of them
Yes.
to get there. So what is the whole thing that's holding it up?
So the beginning of the campaign, it started about 2009, 2010, and we worked with a grand coalition of organizations in LA to legalize street vending. And that resulted in a couple of major things. First, in 2018, we helped pass Senate Bill 946, which was championed by Ricardo Lara, who's our current insurance commissioner. At that time, he was a senator. And that sort of decriminalized sidewalk vending throughout the state. And it basically created a system for cities all over California to legalize vending. Right after that, LA was like, oh, damn, the state is telling us to do this. So then they finally finished the job and legalized street vending. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic, they launched their permit program. So this was huge and has been huge for a lot of vendors. But one of the challenges in what we won back then was that it didn't take into account the extra barrier that street food vendors face. So if you and I are taqueros, for example, and like we're right there with Gotti and we're like on 4th and Breeden and Boyle Heights, and we want to get our permits. If we go to the city of LA, which we can right now, they're going to say, great, here's your application. It's relatively simple. I think the permit fee right now is $291 for the year. And then they're going to ask, well, what do you sell? We're going to say, well, Rafa and I sell tacos. And then they're going to be like, oh, cool. Well, can you show us your health department permit? Well, that is the piece that's the hardest to get for most food retailers of all types. And for food vendors, they have to go through this really cumbersome process. The permits are really expensive. I think they're like $750 a year. You have to get equipment certified by an architect, and then you got to take it to the health department and drive it over there and get plans approved, and it's a whole mess.
Wow. Then
Then you have to make sure that you're cooking your tacos or preparing them in a certified commercial kitchen, which has its own permit process. You have to store your cart in a commissary, and you have to have proof of that. So it would cost you and I probably $30,000 to $35,000 to get going.
Wow.
And you know that the folks that we see don't have that.
No.
The reason why all that problem exists is because the health departments are administering a state code. And this state law basically tells them how they should administer the local stuff. And this state law is designed for restaurants and big food trucks. They don't acknowledge street vending in their code.
Wow.
So what the current state of the situation is that there's a campaign that morphed out of the LA Street Vendor campaign called the California Street Vendor campaign. And this year we're working to modernize this code and legalize street food vending and make it easier for street food vendors to get their health department permits. And we're really close. We're really close. It's going to be heard in the Assembly Appropriations Committee on August 3rd. And then hopefully it'll pass the Assembly floor. And then hopefully the governor signs it. So this could essentially change the game for street food vendors throughout the state.
Well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not that they don't want to do the process, but it's a completely process that's out of reach.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part. I mean, of course, there's going to be maybe some food vendors that are like, I don't want to go through that process. Maybe it's not, not everybody's the same.
Yeah.
But the vendors, the hundreds and thousands of vendors that have participated in this process, some of them that are going to Sacramento with us to advocate, Rafa, they're like, I just want to work. Yeah. I don't want to have any problems.
I know a lot of them too, yeah.
They're like our parents that are just like, I just want to work. I go to church on Sundays. I need to work on Saturdays. I don't want to have any problems with the cops.
Yeah.
If they get a citation, they're stressed about what happened, and I'm just, how do I make it?
Yeah.
So hopefully.
Currently right now, I mean, and sadly, like in the news, there's a lot of like attacks on, the street vendors. And I mean, that's just an insane, like, part of being somebody who's vulnerable out in the streets working with cash in your pocket and with things that can be taken from you. I don't know, is there like something that is being done like for their safety, or is that just something that we pray our community just protects us? Or
we've been getting a lot of media inquiries about this. I think in the pandemic, all of us saw the viral videos of vendors getting harassed or getting robbed, or some of them have been killed.
Wow.
And there's certain activists online that are really trying to showcase this is happening and try to do something about it. And I think it's good, But what I tell the media is that these random acts of violence is not. I wonder if it shouldn't be the priority focus. Is what and I could be wrong, but to me, I see that violence usually comes from the state. It comes from the cities and the counties, and we don't talk about that enough. But street vendors in our cities have been the victims of violence for a really long time. It's violent when the health department comes and takes all your stuff and throws everything away and gives you a heavy citation. They were threatening street food vendors during the pandemic with $1,000 misdemeanor fines misdemeanors that would really threaten your ability to get citizenship if you were undocumented.
Wow.
So to me, that's really violent. And so when we see these random acts of violence, I'm much more interested in like, how do we sort of move it towards the system view? Because the reason why these vendors are vulnerable to begin with is because our public sector doesn't care about them, because they're also afraid. If they see something shady, they're concerned about like, well, who do I call? Like, I don't want to call the cops because they're going to bust me too. Like they're not safe.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's the discourse that I think we should have.
They're pretty much left out there,
totally
unprotected.
And we're in a pandemic and coming out of one where everyone is really struggling. I mean, poverty is violence, and I think I want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about I think we need to take care of those vendors. It's terrible what's going on, but I think that we should point the finger at ourselves and in our government.
Yeah. Can you just explain a little bit about what you mean by poverty is violence?
What do you want? What do you want to know? I mean, I think that it's I'm
just saying because I mean I kind of I understand like how certain things people don't understand how is that violent? Like violence is hitting somebody. So like for the listeners that don't understand, like something that's not actually hitting somebody or not running them over or not shooting, like how is something that doesn't have actual contact, how is that violence? And because the word violence is now
I mean I think that well, I will say that street food vendors and other vendors see that physical violence too.
Yeah, they definitely
from from an authority. And this is not only in LA, it's throughout America. There's allies across the country that are working on these things. So they see the physical violence, but there's also other forms of aggression that may not be physical. And there's emotional aggressions. There's the way that folks are perceived, and I think that's also violent. I think poverty is violence to me because you can't really participate fully in society if you don't have resources. You can't really be civically engaged and vote and participate and understand how policies are working if you don't have money. If you're worried about food and you're worried about taking your kids to school, and that's violent when we're taking that away from people. There's if you're worried about your rent, which is something that we've been seeing with a lot of our clients, is that they're worried not only about their business, but they're worried about paying their rent. Especially during this pandemic, they're worried about negotiating with their landlords. Kicking somebody out of their house is violent.
Yeah.
And so I have a broader definition of violence for sure. It's more than someone like knocking me out.
Yeah,
it's like
of course.
It's like we're hurting people. We're harming.
Yeah. That's definitely violence.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have seen it in the streets when that happens, and when they get their carts taken away, things dumped all over the floor, and just harassed. Getting back a little bit to inclusive action. I know that we jumped on the street vending thing, but so inclusive action, can anybody come and like approach you and reach out to you?
Totally.
What is there a website?
There's a website, inclusiveaction.org. We can, I mean, we work with anybody that hits us up that needs support, and if we can help them, we refer them to somebody that can. I mean, the name, it's interesting, Inclusive Action, we really mean that. Like, it really takes all of us, and we're a smallish organization, but I think that we really are proud to work within a network of other really great people that are trying to help, so... we welcome anybody that needs help. We often even get folks that are like us. They have an idea, I have a project that I want to do. Can I help? And we try to be connectors.
Do you guys have like entrepreneurial training programs and things like that?
Yeah. So what we currently have right now is we have this loan program, and out of this loan program, every person that gets a loan from us for their business is sort of enrolled, quote unquote, in a coaching program. So every entrepreneur that we work with, we see, and we provide tailored support to them. And so basically we meet with them often, as much as they like, but usually at least once a month. Okay. And so that's the type of program that we have. We're rolling out a new program soon that's going to be focused on young entrepreneurs.
Oh, nice.
And that's going to be more cohort based. So there's going to be a little one-on-one there, but it's going to be more cohort based. We're going to be providing capital to young entrepreneurs that are looking to start businesses and have great ideas and just need some money. Yeah.
What's the smallest loan you guys do?
Smallest is 1,000, but I think we might be doing 500 now too. But the smallest is around 1,000, and the highest is 35,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good amount of money right there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that it's cool, man. I don't know. It's interesting, like me personally in my relationship with the organization, because I see myself a lot. Like I'm really connected to this work. I see how money can help and how it could harm, and we're trying to manipulate this to support people.
So how do you think money can harm?
Well, I think I grew up in an environment where we were always sort of traumatized by the fear of not having enough, and I think that that's harmful to grow up in an environment like that. You know, when someone is so stressed out, I think about my mom or other sort of family members that like operate from a place of desperation because they're just trying to survive. And that's harmful because they're not able to fully contribute to their community because they're worried. And we are trying to get to a place where it's like this person has an amazing idea to open up a brick and mortar restaurant, and we should try to get them that money to make that happen. Like they deserve that too, you know.
What are your qualifications for somebody? Do you have a base? Like, what are you looking for in people that come to you for a loan?
Well, there's a process that's similar to even if you went to a bank. I mean, there's an application, and we're going to ask for a variety of, financial statements if you have them, if you have tax returns. The difference with our system compared to others is that if an entrepreneur comes to us and is like, oh, I haven't done my taxes, or I don't have financial statements, or I might not have a bank account.
Yeah.
That we basically work with them to develop a profile of like, okay, cool. Then let's find other ways to understand what's happening with your business and how you're going to use the money to help it grow. And at the end of the day, our underwriting process is really seeking to confirm that a loan is going to be helpful and not harmful. And so we're looking, can the person with their business, take care of the loan payment, and can they successfully pay this off? Is it going to
not end up with
debt
that
right.
they can't cover?
So sometimes we have clients that come in and they're like, oh, I need $30,000 for this, like brand new camera, let's say. And we'll be like, all right, let's look. What do you got going on? Do you have clients lined up? Or like, what are your personal expenses like? And then we may realize like, you know what, this is probably not going to be helpful to you. It's probably going to give you this huge loan payment every month, and we may reduce it and then have a conversation. Is that still going to be helpful? So it's really a co-creation process, I think. And the coaching piece that is connected to the loan is also really helpful, because sometimes we're like, man, this is a little bit risky. Let's go, but let's try to create a plan to make sure that you're able to get this done.
And I guess each individual person is a different case.
Totally.
Judge it by case and by the people and
you'd be surprised, Rafa. Like, man, like some of the businesses, I'm like, man, you guys are on one in a good way.
Yeah.
Like there's businesses that I'm like, oh my God, this is like a really risky like prospect. Like they're applying for a $10,000 loan. It might be a señora that has a table and she's selling like jewelry in the Piñata district. And I'm like, I don't know, is she really gonna be able to pay this $10,000 loan off? And every time they do.
That's awesome.
And then they're like, I'm ready for the next one and I want more. and it kind of like reminds you again and again how inspiring and like resilient and like, beautiful our people are.
Yeah. I mean, they're out there busting ass.
Yeah, 100%.
Working hard. You mentioned that some people go to get loans for cameras. So I want to line up.
Website? I know. It's a cool program, and I think it's I think we're small though. I mean, in the last few years, we've deployed about $1.5 million in microloans, and we have to think about the system, and we have to think about how we push, and we have to think about why is it that others are not doing it this way.
Do you think that people should go to like a traditional bank first and try it, or do you think that?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, what I just mean, like, should they go to you first, or should they go to a bank first? Like,
I think that they could always come to. They should always find a trusted person to talk to. somebody that perhaps is not on TV, and and get some good advice, and I think we saw that a lot in the pandemic. Businesses were making decisions. It was like, you should not do that. Like, you should talk to an attorney first,
Okay.
and so if that first entity is us, happy to like sort of coach them and be like, maybe you're actually pretty good, Rafa, like your business is pretty thriving, you could just go to Bank of America or the credit union. We do those referrals all the time. But what I tell folks is like, always try to find a trusted source of information. Don't listen to the gossip on the streets all the time. Like, try to find, confirm from a couple of sources that something's good.
Got it. How's your photography been doing?
It sucks. I think the pandemic really impacted me.
Yeah. So you also, besides all this, you also take photos. You've been a photographer for a while, right? You've been on it. I mean, for a while you were shooting almost every day too, right?
I was.
Yeah. And so you stopped?
I think the pandemic sort of just paused that.
Really?
Because I wasn't going out a lot. I was like
Okay.
I was only going out for work.
Yeah.
And I was like, there was some vulnerable family members that I was like, I gotta think about, the risk that I want to take, and so that sort of just paused and kind of like sapped me creatively, I think. I mean, I still carry a camera with me every day. I'm just not busting it out,
Are you shooting film or digital?
Digital.
Yeah, just shoot.
I know. I literally have my camera with me every day, and I just I mean, photography is amazing. It helps you see the world in a different way. And I think when I was a kid, out of the many things that I wanted to do, one of them was I wanted to be an animator when I was young. And so I lost that because my mom was like, how are you going to make money with that, dude? Like, you're not going to make money as an artist or sort of an illustrator. Like, go to study business or whatever, But I was always a creative. And the photography thing, when I picked up the camera and learned about it, like it was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was like, damn, this is dope.
Yeah.
So it's like a way for me to channel, it's a way for me to channel my creativity, but also decompress. So before the pandemic, the weekends were the photo time. It's like I had the Monday through Friday doing economic development stuff and trying to figure out these things and the political work. And then Saturday I was like, I'm just going to walk, with my camera.
That's the fun part. Yeah. Have you done the walk on the 6th Street Bridge for pictures yet? Of course, yeah.
Dude, I went there because they had the sort of the grand opening, and man, dude, it's a mess right now. There's like people crashing on the bridge and everything. It's like, man, I guess I guess good. People are enjoying it.
There's a lot of
good.
excitement around it right now.
I guess that's good.
It's pretty ridiculous because I was actually passing through there a week after the opening, midnight, packed.
Really?
That was on Friday night. Came back Sunday at midnight just to see. Sunday at midnight, people have to go to work Monday, and at midnight it was packed.
Really?
And people were not just driving, but walking it. They were parking in the Arts District and just walking the entire bridge at midnight.
What does that tell us about us?
Well, this is what I said last week to Nico. I said it's like, they don't give us a lot in the neighborhood.
They don't give us a lot,
they gave us this beautiful bridge, and it is beautiful. And one of my favorite meme that I saw this week, somebody did a meme that said, people in Boyle Heights acting like they're in Dubai,
Yeah,
walking across this bridge. That was hilarious.
But man, I think we deserve more of that. I think maybe we're so starved,
That's my point. Yeah, like we don't have a lot of that.
I'm worried about the sort of the displacement pressure that's going to come from that. That's expected. That's already happening, and I think that has been happening for years in anticipation of this. But it sucks that we're in this dynamic, Rafa, where our communities are afraid to get good things because of how it's going to harm them in some way. And so I was like laughing at I wasn't laughing, but I was like, shaking my head at the kids that were crashing their cars on the bridge and stuff. But then I was like, you know what? Like, we need more. And like, we also need to make sure that we can enjoy this for as long as we want. So we don't feel some kind of a desperate, like, oh my God, let's enjoy while we can still live here.
Yeah.
Before we can anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that whole underneath it, I don't know what's going to happen down there. There's just so much.
It looks dope. The illustrations going to be parks and everything.
Yeah.
How are we going to protect ourselves from the impacts.
Do you have any political aspirations?
No.
No?
I do have political aspirations. Like I want to win these policy changes. I want to protect folks. I want them to get money.
Yeah.
I want them to have the opportunity to be their best selves, you know? But I think my political aspirations are about that. And I don't think it's about...
just in moving and shaking the people in it.
Yeah, I think that's why I like working at Inclusive Action, because it's like, it's one side is the money piece. It's like, how do we raise money and get money to people that need it, that can't get it elsewhere? The other piece is the advocacy work, and the time we spend at City Hall, and this year going to Sacramento, is like, we understand that the systems that we currently have suck. They need to be modified. They're designed to hurt us, and so we need to put pressure. And I think that my role within that is to be a servant of that and to work on the outside. You know.
Where do you want to go with this eventually with Inclusive Action? Like,
we're figuring it out together.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team is amazing. There's really smart people that work there. They have really good ideas for the future, and I think the future is really going to be more community led. And I think we're thinking about how do we make that, how do we democratize everything. We acquired some real estate, you know, and so we're like thinking about like, you know, how do we democratize that and make sure that it's owned by people that are right here, you know. I think that that's part of the future. And then for me, I don't know, I think I like this stuff. I think I'm always going to be part of this work of like, how do you manipulate money in a way that helps people? Yeah.
Keep telling us how.
I guess
as you figure it out.
I think we need to figure it out together, you know, because like people like you, Rafa, like you're a connector, you're an artist, you're a storyteller. And my job, I'm not good at those things, but maybe I'm good at organizing capital and bringing different people to meet you. And I think everybody has a role to play. And
that's why you're here too, so we can spread the word.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you think that we are missing that you would like to talk about, cover? Boyle Heights, East LA, growing up, more about the street vendors, anything else?
You know, this is an important year for street food vendors. I think we need to pass this law. I think it's really critical, and I think everyone has a role to play in that. And it could be as simple as like making a phone call to your assembly member, and that's going to be really important. But one thing that I want to share with you, Rafa, as I was driving over here.
Real quick, and we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
So people always say, make a phone call to your assembly member. When you do, what do you suggest people say? Like,
we could give you some support on what, but honestly, a lot of it is sometimes they never hear from anybody. If you go to City Hall, which everybody should, like, there's usually not a lot of people there. Let's talk about pre-pandemic. Right now, there's not a lot of people because people don't want to get sick. But like pre-pandemic, like there was not a lot of people that showed up. So if you call and say, hey, I'm really concerned about displacement. I love the new bridge, but I'm really concerned about these things, and I want to make sure that I'm involved in helping to create a solution. They never get, I don't think they get a lot of calls like that.
Okay.
And the more people that are saying, hey, I care about this, I want to be part of the solution, I want to help, I think that that's valuable, and that might be enough. For this campaign for street food vendors, the assembly and the legislator throughout the state needs to understand that we're concerned that street food vendors are being hurt, that they're being hurt by different types of people, including some that might have a county or city badge. And we need to make sure that they're part of our community. We don't want them to go anywhere, you know. And
during the pandemic, you guys also, was it Inclusive Action that gave out like the money cards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an adventure.
So you guys raised some money and gave like pretty much cash to street vendors that were not able to work.
Yeah, totally. That was a result of Maribel, our director of lending, when the beginning of the pandemic in March, when some of our borrowers were coming in to make their payments, some of them make them in cash. And she was like, Rudy, like, they're really concerned. It was like no one on the streets this week. Like, it's all new. And this is right before the shutdown. And she's like, I don't think we could take this money. And I was like, what do you think we should do? And she's like, I think we should defer everybody's payments until this is done, you know? And I was like, let's go. And so we did that. And then like the next day we saw a lot of people say, take out a loan, small businesses take out a loan to pay your rent, and like we're gonna help you survive. And we're like, people should not take out loans.
That's the worst time.
It's weird for a lender to say that, but we're like, that's not a good idea.
No, that's the worst time.
Don't take out a loan. And so then we're like, well, we need to get cash to people. And then I reached out to the allies in the campaign, you know, Carla, Community Power Collective, the attorneys at Public Counsel, the folks that we work with on this policy stuff, and like, hey, should we start raising some money and start giving out cash to people?
Wow.
And they were like, let's do it. We set up the GoFundMe, and then we got some grants from people that wanted to help. They didn't know what to do, and we're like, put it into this pot of money. We're going to give it out to vendors. I called a homie at a bank, and I was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out a safe way to get cash to people. Like, can you like give me a card or something? And they connected me to somebody else. Shout out to James. He connected me to somebody that was like this vendor, this like global vendor of like debit cards.
Wow.
So I called them and I was like, hey, we're doing this thing. It's called the Street Vendor Emergency Fund. And like, I need like a card I could upload the cash to, and then we're going to give them out to people. And I don't want no application.
Yeah.
They might be undocumented. It has to be easy to get the money out.
It's like a gift card, pretty much.
It's like a gift card. And they have to be able to withdraw it from an ATM.
Yeah, okay.
So they were like, we're down. Usually we charge a fee, but let's just try it. And so then it ended up being a thing, dude. And I think we ended up deploying like $1 million.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
This is why you would make a good movie producer.
I know. But no, the cool thing about it is like the people that came together, like the Community Power Collective, where like the organizers were there getting the word out, telling the vendors, the vendor leaders themselves were out there making the list, the rosters of people. Yeah. Vendors were making decisions of like, hey, you know what? I don't need the card this month. Wow. I can make it. This person needs it. Yeah. And like, it was all these like, it was mutual aid.
What a trip. Yeah.
And so then, the card got better, and then we put the logo on the front, and like we started to get good at it. And I think that was a cool experiment. It was a lot of work. Yeah. Shout out to Julie on my team, the operations team, that were like up late at night every night before a delivery because they had to like load all the cards. Yeah. It's tons of work.
Wow. Well, congrats on that. That was very awesome, and I got to witness it and get some pictures of that whole event. So now getting back to, what was it that you saw on the freeway?
I forgot.
Are you serious?
I think I was thinking about life and death.
On the way here?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been thinking a lot about it. And I've been thinking about how long do we have left, and like I feel like the world is just getting worse. And I'm getting to a place, I think, where I'm realizing, like literally just this year, that no one is coming to help. And I'm realizing, I think, because like the señoras, like early on were like, oh, joven, they would call me joven, and now they call me like señor. Like now they're like, oh, el señor. I'm like, oh shit, like I'm not a joven anymore. Like what's going on? And I'm starting to realize that, Rafa, no one's coming to save us, dude. No one is coming to help us. So if we're concerned about a business not having the capital to build their business, or we're concerned about displacement around the bridge, or we're concerned about who owns these properties and why they have them and we don't, like it's up to us to figure out how to solve that. And so I think, I don't know, it's just a feeling that I had coming over here of like, how are we gonna like step up to that? Yeah. And if it's not us, no one's coming.
It's up to us. I like that. I'm gonna put that on a shirt.
Yeah.
I'm serious about that, but that's a tough thing to think about. And it is up to us, and it's just, getting people to listen and to be active. I think I was talking last week with Nico too, and a lot of it is that a lot of people just don't have time to be involved. Yeah. Don't have time to come out. They work a lot, and then also cook at home and do all the things they do at home. So it's hard to get 100% like people jumping in on something.
I think that I think that's right. And I think that's what I worry. Like when I think about like poverty being violence, like I think that it's violent when we are taking someone's ability to engage in that way. Like I see some of the vendors that we work with, Rafa, and they're like really elderly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and they're coming in looking for a loan.
Sometimes you see them in the street, you're like,
dude,
oh,
like they're really elderly, and they're looking for a loan to like keep going at it.
yeah.
They're looking for a cash card because they're like, I just need to pay this rent, but I'm gonna get back and hustle tomorrow. And they're in their 60s and 70s and older, and some of these people though, like they're more than the hustle. Like they're like gifted storytellers, they're artists, like they have all this, they're great organizers, and because they're not able to take care of their basic needs, they can't use those skills, and I think we're losing so much. So I think that's we're really harming ourselves when we're not able to get resources, we're not able to take care of our folks because they have to think about other things. It's not a good use of their mind. So I don't know, I want to be part of that, of trying to figure out how to help folks like that, you know. So,
well, that's a major task. That's a tough one. Yeah.
But no one's coming. It's only us.
No. Little by little, that's all we can do, right?
Totally.
Just chip at it.
And we need to stick together. And I think that's I think it's really important for us to have some, you know, collaboration across sectors and have conversations and discourse and challenge our ideas. I think that's all really important because no one else is coming.
Yeah. That's a note that we're going to conclude this with.
Already?
Not that no one else is coming, but know that no one else is coming, so do something.
Yeah.
So no one else is coming to help us, so do something. That's good. I like that. Is there a website people can find you?
Inclusiveaction.org.
Inclusiveaction.org. And on Instagram, do you want them to follow you?
Sure. If you want to follow me, my inclusiveaction.org is on Instagram. Okay. And then you could follow me on Instagram too. Yeah. Sometimes I post things.
More pictures, hopefully.
Yeah.
There's a question that we ask everybody at the end of each show. And it's a general question, and you can answer in a general way, but what I ask is try to answer in one sentence. If somebody from another planet or somebody from another country was trying to understand what you do and how everything that you do, because they see like that you do so much for everyone and for everything and for yourself as well, and if they just ask Rudy Espinosa, how do you do it?
I do it with one sentence, you said, Rafa? Man, I do it. I do it with purpose.
That's beautiful. Do it with purpose. Thank you so much. Hopefully next time we'll have more time to talk, and maybe next time we can pick a specific thing that we can talk about a lot longer and break it down more.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
And I appreciate you being here. I know that you're in a time crunch, and so it makes me appreciate more that you gave us time today. And we'll see you guys next week.